All right, welcome to Halitics on Friday. It's the free for all. Hope you join me. Free for all means join me. Call. I have been doing the live streams all week by myself. I don't think I had any guests, which is fine. I actually prefer that. I love doing just me with you, and the more we get to talk, the better, as far as I'm concerned. But talking is a two-way street. So I need you to join me as well. I need your thoughts, your opinions, your reactions to what I discuss. Free for all means any topic. Lots of times, most days, I really do like to stay on a specific issue, a specific dynamic theme, what have you. Yesterday's theme, California, got a lot of response, a lot of people watching the video so far, at least given my low numbers. I was pleased. I was happy. And I hope more people like and subscribe. Got a lot of watchers, a lot of views, not so many likes and subscribes or comments even. So I hope you will take a moment, if you're watching right now, to click subscribe, click like if you like what I'm doing here. I did mention we'll be talking about Jimmy Dore and Doreism. I've been focusing on Jimmy more than usual for several reasons, but and I say several because it's really more than one, but this is a guy that I think more than any other is why I'm doing this live stream right now. I really have what's the word I'm looking for? I really have admiration for his willingness, his relentless criticism of the Democratic Party. I think it's very important, very valuable. So many people on the left view the Democrats as the lesser of two evils, or not even evil. They're reconstructible. We can somehow figure out a way to work with them. I think, and I've felt that way. And I discussed this with David Cobb of the Green Party just very recently, and I've been discussing it with this issue with him for many years. I think the Democrat Party has gotten worse. I think it's more corrupt than ever. I definitely think Citizens United is a big part of this. I did support Al Gore in 2000. I've been harshly critical, and I continue to be, of Ralph Nader for giving us George W. Bush. I believe Gore would have been a better president than Nader. And obviously better than W, who's one of the worst presidents we've ever had, even through Trump. So I am not somebody who in the past was viewed the parties equally or as equally bad. I think there were many things Bill Clinton did that were terrible, but I don't think the Democratic Party of the 90s was as bad as the Republican Party at that time in general, although free trade kind of throws a monkey wrench into that argument. Regardless, Al Gore, in my view, was a better choice, a much better choice than W. And a better choice, frankly, than Nader. Would have been a better president than Nader. Jimmy Dore, over the past 10 years or so, has really laid into the Democratic Party of the third millennium. He has demonstrated its consistent corruption, how it turns people who seem, at least, to be good, decent people. He platformed, by the way, people don't realize this, AOC, I think it was back in 2016 when she ran and won. He provided her with significant exposure, and it was meaningful, and she did win, and then she basically stiffed him, stopped talking to him. He has consistently shown that he is on the side, at least until recently, of progressives. And I welcome that, because I'm always looking for people who share my political views. And Dore has been about as close to anybody in media. And that includes, of course, the traditional bricks and mortar media, whether it's newspapers or TV. And I've been incredibly disappointed with virtually everything. Progressive talk is not progressive. People like Stephanie Miller, who I once admired, is not progressive. Tom Hartman is not progressive. They have adopted in some occasions some progressive views, but they are not progressive in the sense that they will call out the Democratic Party for its activities that are so anti-human. So I've given Jimmy a bit of a pass for when I think he's gone a little bit off the rails, and he's taken on people that I respect and honor and think for wrong head. Now, I think you can go after anybody. I don't think there's but nobody gets a free pass. And I said I just gave Jimmy a bit of a pass and it wasn't because I would completely disagree with him on something, but I might say, well, I don't think you're getting that right. Let's put it that way. I don't think you're necessarily getting that right. But I've kind of given him the benefit of the doubt. But now I'm not going to do that. Not nearly as much. I'll still watch his videos. He still provides important information, such as how the Democrats continue to flog Russiagate, Ukrainegate, how the Democrats are, as much as the Republicans now, the party of war. That's valuable information, but I'm going to be much more careful about triple checking it. His recent attacks on Greta Thunberg have upset me, irritated me, angered me, and they're not utterly, completely wrong-headed. He has gotten at least one thing right about her, which we'll talk about. I'm not going to ignore it. But I do now urge you, if you have in the past, and some of you have completely turned off Jimmy, and that's a mistake too, because again, he has demonstrated a refreshing, virtually unseen honesty when it comes to the Democratic Party. I will say that right now, Brianna Joy Gray and Robbie Suave do a very nice job on the Hill Rising. And generally, I like Sagar and Crystal Ball and their program, but sometimes they're a little too centrist for me. For most people, that'd be all far left, but sometimes I think they too, or at least Crystal Ball buys into Democratic talking points to a degree. Sagar is more of a libertarian. I disagree with him on some things, agree with him on others. Before we get to the video of Jimmy and also my thoughts on Thunberg, though, and we'll also end with, if we have time and I don't get calls and we don't get sidetracked, I will talk briefly about Ukraine and also present a view that I think is, well, I know it's different. Its conclusions are different than my own, but I think is important and should be presented, even if I ultimately don't share it. So that's something that I think is one way we can determine who is credible, who is trustworthy. Do they present various viewpoints? Are they willing to acknowledge when other views may be legitimate and even amend their own views? That's something I have not seen from Jimmy. Dore is not, he's very dogmatic. He states something and he believes it to be true. Here's a comment from Shade. Much of what Jimmy Dore, this is on the at the pop-up chat, in the chat, at the live stream that's going on right now on YouTube. So I hope you will review that. That is where you're obviously watching it. Click like, click subscribe. What Shade says, much of what Jimmy Dore, and if you see me looking to the side, it's because I am looking at what Shade wrote. Much of what Jimmy Dore says seems to be the first thing that pops into his head that will create controversy and feed his audience, many of whom blindly hold on to every word he says. Okay, I agree. Yes, there is unfortunately a willingness to believe whatever Jimmy says. I don't think it's whatever pops into his head. I think it's very, I think he plans it out. I think he thinks, gee, is this something that my audience is going to ultimately like? Are they going to buy it or aren't they? Does this feed into the conspiracy theories that my audience tends to like and what has really caused them to embrace my show? And claiming that the climate crisis is not completely, accurate, that there may be nefarious forces that are trying to get you to believe something that's against your best interests. That is right in the wheelhouse of Dore's audience. So I think that's why he presents it. Now, he has been right about, I don't know if I want to call them conspiracy theories because that is such a loaded term, but when he has slammed the Democratic Party for its fealty to big money, to corporate interests, to warmongers, he's been right. He's been right. So he has credibility there. When he attacks the Democratic Party for not being on your side when it comes to Medicare for all, he's right. He has credibility. He's built it up. But no one gets a pass when you start screwing up, when you start taking the side of the corporate elites. the financial elites, and you're doing so at the cost of the planet, which is what he's doing when he attacks climate crisis activists, well, then you don't get a pass. You get attacked. You get slammed by me, and I'm going to point it out. Maybe nobody cares. Maybe nobody's watching. Nobody's listening. I hope some of you are and care. So let's start with Thunberg, and I'm going to not go first to a video of Jimmy criticizing her, but I just want to start with when the Swedish activist Greta Thunberg, and I'm trying not to say her name like in a funny way, but the way I've heard it pronounced, so I understand this is how you pronounce it, Thunberg, in kind of my Americanized accent. She was at Davos early this year. I guess they call it the World Economic Forum. And Dore really slams her for this, and I don't think it's fair. So we'll get into that, but I want to first, before I let you know what Dore says about Greta Thunberg's appearance at Davos, what we do know, and this is from the Associated Press, and I don't think there's any reason to be doubtful of any of this. So there she is with another activist, and she did speak. I guess she was invited to the World Economic Forum. She spotlighted there with other activists, two others, the destruction of the planet through the investment in fossil fuels and prioritizing short-term profits over people who are being destroyed by the climate cataclysm. Now, I don't know how there's anything the least bit, honestly, I don't see anything the least bit controversial about that statement. That they're fueling the destruction of the planet by investing in fossil fuels and prioritizing short-term profits over people affected by the crisis. She is right. It's true. And she's speaking truth to power. So what more do you want? I don't really know. But we'll continue. I mean, if she said something that was wrong-headed, misguided at different places, or she was a hypocrite, then I would want to call that out. I want to point that out. So, as I mentioned, Greta Thunberg is not the only person at this Davos event. She was joined by two other activists, Vanessa Nakate of Uganda and Helena Gwalinga of Ecuador. I guess I said three. Yeah, three. I said there were four of them, and Louisa Neubauer of Germany. So they were there at a round table. It doesn't sound like they were pulling their punches. You know, one of the things you worry about when progressives are invited to these kinds of affairs is that they'll pull punches, that they'll try to soft pedal a message. They're going to try to make people feel good, or they'll let them greenwash, right? Oh, we weren't so bad at World Economic Forum. Look, we had Greta Thunberg and other activists, so we're okay, right? I mean, that's one of the arguments against going to these kinds of events, because you might well give an out to the bad people, the people who are causing all the problems. Doesn't look like they did that. I don't see that in these statements. It looks like what they're saying, what these four activists are saying, are again speaking truth to power. So as you see, in the slide, the African activist, the Ugandan Nakate, said leaders are playing games with people's futures, and she's saying that to the leaders themselves. She continues that to say that in much of the world, people are clinging to their lives, just trying to make it to another day. We'll find later in the program that is completely 100% accurate. So you say, oh, she's being melodramatic. No, this is the truth. To make it for another week, to make it for another hour, a minute. And then the Ecuadorian Gwalinga said the world is taking a really dangerous path. So again, nothing but praise for the statements there. I don't know, and we'll hear in a moment, criticism for this appearance by Dore, and he just completely gets it wrong. 240-363-7190. He gets it wrong. He gets it wrong in a mean-spirited way. Again, join me, 240-363-7190. 7190. Let's get to that video, and I'm going to interrupt it because I don't, I'm really, this is very hard. In a way, it's hard for me. And I'll tell you why. It's not so hard for me because like I put all my faith or trust in Jimmy Dore, because I didn't. I don't, and I've said, and I real honestly, this is a guy that I've supported. I have platformed on my Facebook page. Obviously, his platform is much, 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 much bigger than mine. But to the extent that I could bring someone like Dore, who is an out of the mainstream voice, who is not presented in corporate media except in a mocking way, except in a way to treat him like he's a joke. I have fought hard against that. I have defended those who have tried to dismiss everything he says by calling him a grifter. I've said, I don't think that's fair, because I think he has talked the talk, and it's not like he's really out there shaking the can for money like a lot of others do, like the Young Turks. He's not going to grab grant money from billionaires like the Young Turks did. So I'm not going to claim, and I haven't seen him pander the way he is now. In the past, he did not pander. I thought he did kind of speak truth to power, say things that he knew people wouldn't like. So for me, it's painful, not because I feel like I personally was betrayed, not painful because I feel like I was stupid or wrong to believe Dore or to trust Dore in the past. It's painful for me because I don't feel like I have any allies. I don't feel like there's anyone out there who's speaking the truth as I see it. Now, there's an opportunity, obviously. If I am right, then I have a clear path, right? There's no one out there who's saying what I'm saying, and I think that's true. And there's no one out there who presents a forum for you to join me and speak about the issues that are important to you and that presumably I find important too. 240-363-7190. Click like, click subscribe. Click subscribe. But that said, it's lonely. It's painful. It's hard. I'm seeing my world, a world that there's still much beauty in, burning up. I see tens of millions, maybe over 100 million Americans living desperate lives, impoverished lives, without support from any government entities. And I find that abhorrent. And I don't, who are my allies out there? I guess Brianna Joy Gray. But she gets things wrong too. We all do. Look, I get things wrong too. 240-363-7190. 240-363-7190. It's so weird because like if I look to the left, because I've got three monitors in front of me. I got the monitor on the right where I've got the live stream going. I've got the monitor on the left where I have my videos and my slide deck. And then I've got myself in the middle. So sometimes I'm looking one way, sometimes looking the other way. When I look to my left on the screen, I'm looking to my right because I mirror myself. That's the mirror so that you see on the wall behind you the images correctly, right? So they have to be mirrored. So that's why you see the get well where it says get well, and the jigsaw puzzle I put together in my little awards, which I'm so proud of. All right, let's get to this video here. Here's Jimmy bashing. There's no other word for it. He's bashing Greta Thunberg. And also, let me just say this. It would be really nice. Maybe he gets it right here. It'd be really nice if he would just say her name. Look, to me, it's, I think it's important to get people's names right. I try really, I don't always succeed, I admit it, but I really try to get people's names right. And you'll hear, I guess Jimmy doesn't give a shit about that. I don't like that. All right, here we go.
They're having the Davos meeting, and these guys from Rebel News in Canada, are they're getting to question people as they walk the street, meaning powerful people like the heads of countries, the heads of Pfizer, and now Greta Thunberg. Now, Greta Thunberg's she has a...
All right, so again, dude, can you get her name right? Let me just say something about Rebel News. That is a right-wing outfit. They're trolls. I think James O'Keefe is part of that. Now, that doesn't mean they're completely, utterly without any credibility. If they break a story, I'm going to try to see if it's legit. Maybe. If it's something I haven't heard, haven't seen elsewhere. but don't treat them like they're some kind of legitimate news outfit. They're not. They, every now and then a broken clock gets the time right. And if they're going to be out there interviewing people, they may now and again get a scoop. But please don't give them, any kind of credibility that they don't deserve. And if you want to say, well, what about, I know some of you might say, well, what about Tucker, Hal? You like Carlson. And I'll say, well, I don't know if I really like Carlson. What I would say is he presented a lot of really important information you weren't getting elsewhere. That's not the case with, quote, rebel, unquote, news.
Huge platform. She's being propped up by every news agency.
All right, so now he's saying Greta Thunberg is getting propped up by every news agency. That's just completely false. She gets very little media attention. As a matter of fact, she's ignored as much as the corporate media can do so. So for him to say that is bull. But to the extent she is covered and she is news, it's kind of an interest, or she came to the world's attention as a high school student in Sweden where she refused to go to school. And, it got a lot of clicks. It got a lot of eyeballs. People were really interested in her. And that's great. That's why she's a good leader for the movement, a good face for the movement, because she attracts media attention. That's actually a good thing. Dore presents as though somehow she's less credible because there's some coverage. She gets some coverage.
Every NGO, she's getting propped up by lots and lots of people, and she has a lot of power.
There's no evidence for that. There's no evidence that she's being propped up, and he doesn't provide any.
I don't know about power, but she has a big reach and a lot.
She has a big power. It's like a joke. He can't say it. Now, this was back in January of this year right during the forum in Davos, which is a disgusting event. I mean, let's admit it, it's just a bunch of billionaires getting to go to Switzerland and ski on, if there's still snow, which there really isn't. So yeah, I mean, it's disgusting what Jimmy's doing there. No, I mean, it's disgusting what the elites are doing at Davos, but again, we've already been through this. Thunberg there is actually speaking truth to power. So yes, they're disgusting, but I don't think that's a reason to. Greta doesn't deserve blame for that.
A lot of influence, right? And
she doesn't have much influence, unfortunately, sadly.
So remember when she said this, right?
Party here.
How dare you?
It is the most important person in the world.
This is the, quote, rebel news. They're mocking her. They are not a legitimate outlet. You could see the caption there, the lower third that they put on her when the "How dare you" quote, which was actually very legitimate. How dare you destroy our planet? And Dore's laughing at that, laughing at her. Somebody who's basically doing everything she can to save the planet. It's really pathetic. This is an ugly, ugly Jimmy Dore we're seeing here. And I will note that when I first saw this, I did not comment on it. I thought, well, Jimmy's entitled to get not a pass, because I said no one gets a pass. But all right, he's entitled to like one rock, right? One error. But since he doubled down and went after her again, and also because one of the things he says in here, I don't think it's wrong, but it's not as wrong as it could be. All right, so let's go some more.
According to the World Economic Forum, it is young Greta Thunberg.
Now,
so they confronted her and they wanted to ask her if
she's the most important person in the world. They gave her a short forum with three other activists.
Questions. And now, what I was going to preface this by saying she's not a kid. She's 20 years old. So she's 2 years older than soldiers who are serving in Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, Syria, Ukraine. She's 2 years older than all those people. So she's not a kid anymore. But she acts like a kid.
All right. So I want to say
she acts like she's 12 years old. This is really weird.
20-year-olds are often kids. I can tell you, as the father of two kids in their mid-20s. Okay, so that's point one. Point two is that Greta Thunberg does have I don't know what you want to call it. She's on the spectrum. She has Asperger's, and this does cause her to act slightly differently in some situations, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But again, Dore, just reflecting, demonstrating his own ignorance here.
Me, what you think of this, because it seems to me she has a chance to answer questions, people who she's going to have to convince, so we can all get on board for this climate change thing, because you can't do it with only half the population or a quarter of it. You have to get everybody on board. And
all right, so Dore's saying it's important we persuade people, and the way Greta Thunberg reacts isn't really getting us to that place. And so my answer to that is, Dore, well, then why don't you start persuading people? Why aren't you talking about the climate crisis? Why aren't you, as I am, for example, why aren't you telling us all about how serious this problem is? Because it is that serious. So I don't really get it. If your concern is that Greta Thunberg isn't as, I don't know, persuasive, that she is not always the best advocate, as none of us are ever always the best advocate for anything. But if your concern here is that she's not making a strong enough case, then why aren't you doing it? Then jump in, help her out. You've got a big platform. You've got a lot of influence. You're talking every day, several times. So if you think that she's not the best speaker on this topic, why don't you tell us about how bad it is?
so she's an activist. She would want to reach these people and the people who watch them. It would make sense that she would want to talk to them and bring her message, because that's how you change people, with your message.
All right, so I don't totally disagree with that. But of course, again, Rebel News is a right-wing troll operation, which really isn't the case. And people always say, well, again, you know, compared to Carlson. Not really the case with Tucker Carlson. I think Tucker Carlson did demonstrate some intellectual curiosity, as frankly did, and much to my shock, Laura Ingraham, when she interviewed Dr. West just recently in a video I played or shared part of with you. That is not the case with Rebel News. Rebel News is out here to humiliate and embarrass Greta Thunberg on behalf of a, you know, extreme right-wing audience. You'd, again, endure, if your interest is to persuade those people, why don't you? Why don't you, rather than trying to debunk or try to embarrass or humiliate Thunberg? I guess you just don't really care. You're just not an ally, obviously. You're just the opposite. You're part of the problem.
She doesn't do that. Let's watch what she does.
Greta, how did you get here today? What was your climate footprint in traveling here?
Now, that seems like a totally legit question to ask the world's #1 climate change activist. What's the best way to travel if you're conscious of climate change? So how did you travel to get here?
All right, so I'm going to stop it. So she sort of giggles there, and I guess the theory is, again, she might have been uncomfortable. She was being confronted. It isn't a terrible question. But Greta Thunberg has consistently taken clean, green transportation to event after event. And where did she come? Now, that I didn't show you this, but I want you to see it here. So the event was, again, in Switzerland, in Davos, Switzerland. And the AP story tells us exactly where she came from. It doesn't tell us the mode of transportation, and I wasn't able to find the video, but I'm pretty sure the clip, but I'm pretty certain it was by, she did actually come by train. But here there's giggling. And I think part of the reason she giggles is right here. She arrived in Davos from Germany, which is of course right next door, where she participated in a demonstration in a town. So she was actually an activist. She was actually acting against the climate crisis. She was trying to stop the expansion of a coal mine. And her boots showed that. They were covered in mud from that protest where she had been removed by police. She, again, Greta Thunberg, when she's being confronted by this clown, this troll, was coming from a protest where she was removed by police. She was standing up to the police. She was standing up to power. And I mean, the nerve of these people and the nerve of Jimmy Dore, frankly, to get this so wrong and use her as an example somehow of a phony climate activist. And I'd just say one other point. Even if it's true, which it isn't in this case, that she's only talking the talk, she's not walking the walk, which I think you could make that argument certainly about people like Bill Gates and to a lesser degree Al Gore. Yeah, they're talking the talk, they're not walking the walk, they're flying private jets and the like. And they're not putting themselves in harm's way. That's clearly not the case with Greta Thunberg. She's a hero. She's flat out a climate hero. And for someone like Jimmy Dore, who's such a talker, like me, who's behind a microphone like me, to have the nerve to go after this brave woman, and I'll say young woman because he's like, oh, she acts like a little girl. Well, she's what, 20, 21 in that? So she's emotionally still immature, especially because of her spectrum disorder. So for him to take her on, I'm not going to say, he's being a bully. All right, she's a public figure. She's open, she's open. There's no passes, but that's just BS. It's just, I don't know what, it's just, taking, it's absurd. It's absurd. And Dore is the one, not Thunberg, who comes out of this looking awful, losing credibility, which is a little bit of a problem for me because much of what he says I do find credible. But nobody gets a pass. No, and there's no third rails. I'll talk about anything. Nobody gets a pass. All right, more. Let's get a little more from Dore. See that? Let's see if we can see the whole thing with this video here.
It's not her own. She has OCD as well,
right,
so she gets obsessive.
And she was also recently what appeared to be.
All right, that was the. Let's see if we can get.
It's not her own. She has OCD as well.
People are being.
Because they're going to talk about her autism here, and I want to play that clip, but I guess I missed it. I do apologize, folks. Let's see, maybe.
With police, what appeared to be. They certainly were stopping to take pictures with her. They're going to show it in a second, and then they're going to ask her about it. And this would be a good chance to.
Okay, let's see. Here we go.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I couldn't know my mic worked. I thought she has like some kind of.
She has autism. She has autism,
Yeah.
and she also says about her autism that it provides her a superpower. That's how.
All right, so I'm going to stop it there. So again, there you hear Dore's wife, Steph Zamorano, piping in, and again, they're kind of like, okay, well, maybe part of the issue they're trying. It sounds like they're trying to be a little bit fair to her by saying, well, maybe part of the reason she might not have responded quite as quickly with a good quip, a powerful answer to Rebel News is because of her autism, which actually is, high function. She's obviously a high functioning autistic person. And then Zamorano kind of again mocks her. Well, it's like she calls it a superpower. Let's be real. Let's try to be fair. That's what I'm about here. Let's try to be fair. So what, in fact, she said, what, in fact, Thunberg says about her spectrum disorder, not quite full-blown autism, although it is so described. But she does use the word superpower. But again, they're misrepresenting it to, again, kind of mock her, to mock Thunberg. And it's ugly stuff. It really is. So Thunberg likens autism to superpower. That's what this headline says. But then if you look to her exact statement, she says, I have Asperger's, that's high functioning autism, people who are often very, very bright but who hyper focus, who are miss social cues. That's what are the symptoms of Asperger's. And she says, I'm sometimes a bit different from the norm. And given the right circumstances, being different is a superpower. So she's not saying all the time, I'm better than everyone else. She's just saying there are times, for example, my ability, I presume she would say, maybe she wouldn't, my ability to focus on the climate crisis, to not get sidetracked by other issues, that itself can be, in certain circumstances, a superpower. And I'm like, yeah, good, you go. Because we need somebody. This is such a crisis that we need you to use that superpower when it's available to you in the circumstances when it can make a real difference. We need you to use it. So again, the point is, everything you look at the way Greta Thunberg is being attacked in this first video, and we're going to get to a second one in a moment, I wouldn't waste my time going after Jimmy Dore for something that's over 6 months old. I wouldn't do it for just one attack on Greta Thunberg, as wrong-headed, as misguided as it was. But he's continuing it. He's doubling down on his absurd attacks. And I'm not going to stand for it. I'm going to call it out. Hopefully people will, see how bad this is, see how wrong-headed this is, see how misguided this is. So here's Dore again. This is just for a couple of days ago where he gets it completely. And I'm having trouble adjusting for some reason, my screen doesn't like to let me adjust correctly. All right, here we go. So I know, by the way, Arlen, if you're watching, I know Arlen doesn't really watch my program anymore because we have such differences of opinion. We don't agree. We have such differences of opinion on Ukraine and on how bad Trump is versus the Democrats. In other words, I don't think there's that much difference between Trump and the Democrats. I certainly don't think Trump's the worst president ever, and Arlen has a very different view. So I don't think Arlen's watching, which is too bad. I hope you are, Arlen. If you are, comment, question, call 240-363-7190. Oh, and by the way, please click subscribe, click like. So here's more. This is from just a few days ago, Dore's program.
So you know how I feel about climate change. I think the solutions that the establishment has for climate change are all bullshit. For instance, now when you recycle, it doesn't get recycled. It goes to a landfill. I know that's shocking.
All right, so there's truth to that. There is truth. By the way, the establishment doesn't really have solutions to climate change. Okay, there are the Democratic left is pushing for the Green New Deal, more spending. We are seeing that on fossil fuel alternatives. We are seeing that. I, to a degree, agree with Jimmy. That's not going to feed the bulldog. We need much more aggressive action than just simply promoting alternatives. We must actively disincentivize any consumption of any fossil fuels. So yeah, okay. And with regard to the issue of recycling, I'm not sure what he's referring to. He says, I'm not sure specifically what he's referring to. He says when you recycle, a lot of it goes into landfills. I think that's correct. I'm not sure if everything goes into landfills. I think a lot of times recycling does result in at least the cherry picking by the recycling companies, because some of the items we put in recycle bins do have value in recycling. So they are, but yeah, some of that stuff does go into landfills. I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to, but recycling is hardly the solution. Recycling is very expensive. Often it's more expensive than just using regular new items. And to recycle does rely on often energy. So recycling can be as bad or almost as bad as not recycling. So that's fair. I mean, it's true. But I don't know what that has to do with Greta Thunberg. Nothing.
Do you? But that is true. China stopped taking our recyclables, so now they just throw them right into a landfill. Landfill or landfill, okay? And the landfill is full. It's a full landfill.
All right. So again, not completely wrong-headed there, not completely misguided, but Dore doesn't ever say here, we do have a problem with the climate crisis. We are destroying our planet. We do need to solve it, and we can't rely on establishment politicians in both parties who are bought and paid for by the fossil fuel industry. He doesn't ever say that, but that's the truth.
It's a full fill. Greta Thunberg tweets it. So
Right,
Greta
again,
Thunberg
could
is
you say her name right? I mean, it really is. It's juvenile, right? Like he says she's immature. That's immature, right? Saying the name wrong.
obviously an op, right? She's working for the people who want to crush
And
us
now he's gonna-
economically. That's what it's.
There's no evidence to support that. That's just bullshit. Yeah, BS.
seems like to me.
It seems like
She's
okay, seems like
she's
why?
in bed with the
What's your
WEF.
evidence? Okay, he said so there he goes. She's in bed with the World Economic Forum. We talked about this. She did speak at Davos. She spoke truth to power. She didn't soft soap her message. She didn't greenwash. She didn't say, oh, you guys are doing such a great job. Thank you. We just need to do a little more. We just need to make sure we don't elect Donald Trump and everything will be okay. We just have to stop the right-wing neo-Nazi movement. She didn't say any of that. So, again, she's not in bed with the World Economic Forum. She has been honest and direct with them. So, again, you're wrong, Jimmy. Very wrong, dangerously wrong. And it's a problem. Here's, when I say the danger of Doreism, the problem is when people say, okay, Jimmy's got a really good point to be skeptical of the establishment, to doubt what they tell you, to doubt media. That's true. We should doubt, but we have to be smart about it. We have to say, are they telling us something that benefits them if we believe it or not? Is this something that's in their interest to get us to think is true? It's hardly in the interest of the political elites around the world who are bought and paid for by the fossil fuel industry, whether it's in Canada, which is a petro state, whether it's Russia, which is a petro state, whether it's the United States, which is a petro state. It's not in any, whether it's frankly Norway, right, which is a petro state. They develop all that oil and gas off their shores. It's not in their interests to sucker you into believing something that isn't true with regard to the climate crisis. It's in their interest to downplay it, to soft sell it, to say it's not really that serious, which is exactly what Dore is doing here. He's carrying water for the economic elites.
And she looks like a psyop. And she's
I don't even know
pro-war.
what that
She's a
means,
war pig.
All right, so
And so she's
let me
repeating.
stop it. He says she's a war pig. I want to look that up. That could be a really legitimate concern. And frankly, Dore is not 100% wrong here. So I'm not going to ignore this. This is a serious issue. Greta Thunberg is supporting the war. It appears to me from this tweet is very problematic. Her support for endless war in Ukraine, which is devastating for the environment. We've seen the pictures, right? We've seen what it's doing to Ukraine, the destroyed cities, and now this dam. We saw the pipeline that was blown up, which was devastating with all the methane gas going out, probably by the United States, which the U.S. is now blaming Ukraine for. But Thunberg gets this wrong. This ecocide is a continuation of Russia's unprovoked full-scale invasion of Ukraine is yet another atrocity which leaves the world lost for words. Our eyes are once again on Russia, who must be held accountable for their crimes. So she tweets out a Ukraine tweet. Russia blew up Ukraine's Kakhovka Dam, wreaking havoc. It says wrecking, but it should be wreaking havoc on civilians and the environment downstream on the Dnipro River. Russia's army was squandered in Ukraine, so it chose to employ water as a weapon. However, this will only increase Ukraine's resolve to drive them off our soil. Okay. There's a lot wrong with that tweet. It has not been determined with any certitude or real confidence that Russia blew up the dam. So that's Ukrainian propaganda. That's part one. The attack on Ukraine was certainly not unprovoked. It is really bad. It shouldn't have happened. It's terrible. But this is not helping. What we need now more than anything else is a ceasefire. We need the killing to end right now and then come up with a solution that works for everyone. Moving forward with the endless war and this current counterattack that is not going well, I presented that earlier this week, but it continues not to go well, is not making things better for anybody. And it's certainly not helping the people of Ukraine, who are the biggest victims. So yeah, Jimmy's right there. Okay, Jimmy got that right. Greta Thunberg is wrong on Ukraine. Does that mean she's wrong on the environment? No. And I've said this, Jimmy's gotten things wrong too. But I've generally tended to say, okay, well, he gets a lot right, but we all get things wrong. Greta Thunberg is not a pundit. She is a climate crisis activist fighting to make the world a better place. And for Dore to say we have to throw out everything she says because she's wrong on Ukraine is absurd. And I would note that Dore's credibility is shot further because all of his other criticism of her is wrong, is misguided. She did speak truth to power to the World Economic Forum. She didn't lie to them. She didn't soft sell their bad actions, their bad activities. She's not in bed with them in any way. So it's really important to realize that she is, I believe, very, very wrong to retweet out a Ukraine tweet about the dam that's unproven, that's dubious, and that supports endless war. Yes, you're wrong there. I believe strongly. But that doesn't mean you're wrong on a somewhat unrelated issue. It just means we must always be vigilant and not ever view anybody as above reproach, as never wrong, as always believable, as always credible. Because no one is. No one is. And Thunberg isn't there either. All right. The big problem that Dore has with, at least he gets to it later on, is a big problem. It's one of the big problems, one of the many reasons Dore attacks Greta Thunberg is for this tweet. He seems to think it's a gotcha moment for him. It's a gotcha moment. That 5 years ago, Greta Thunberg tweeted, a top climate scientist is warning that climate change will wipe out all humanity unless we stop using fossil fuels over the next 5 years. So for him, that's somehow a red flag, right? Oh, you can't believe her. She's a liar. She's not credible. What she had to say there actually is spot on. It's not the least bit inaccurate. And he makes more of it by saying, well, she deleted the tweet. And hey, we're still here. We're still here, Dore says. Let's see if we can I want to get a little more of that on because I'm really frustrated by that. So let's see if we can, because I jumped off of that video, but we'll see if we can get to it. Yeah, let's see.
Said a top climate scientist is warning that climate change will wipe out all of humanity unless we stop using fossil fuels over the next 5 years. So it's 5 years later. We haven't. In fact, Joe Biden is now opening up preserve wild forest preserves
So I
in
can't
Alaska
say
to
this
drill.
with
And
the proper
we
amount
blew
of
up a
muscle,
pipeline so we could
blood,
sell more
force,
gas to Europe.
personal reputation.
And we created one of the biggest environmental disasters in
everything.
history. And we just blew up a dam in Ukraine, which might anyway. So it's 5 years later, and we didn't stop. We're even doing it more. In fact, the people she hangs out with fly on private jets all over the world. And all I'm saying is, if you believe climate change is real, you wouldn't be flying in a private jet to go tell people that climate change is real.
All right, there's so much wrong with that argument. First of all, it's not Greta Thunberg who's flying in a private jet. She doesn't fly in private jets. Greta Thunberg takes sailboats across the ocean. She takes trains. She always goes by the least carbon-intensive route. So for him to say that and imply, and he doesn't quite say it, but for Dore to imply, well, she, all these people she hangs out with are flying in private jets, is BS. Greta Thunberg absolutely walks the walk. And yes, she does hang out. She did go to that World Economic Forum. She was invited. She spoke truth to power. You got a problem with that, Dore? That's what you're always saying people need to do. She did that. So the criticism is just totally misguided. And finally, his claim is, well, if they're flying private jets, they must not believe in the climate crisis. Why? I don't understand that. It is a situation where, of course, the elites want to live as comfortably and as lavishly as they can, but they don't, you can always say, well, my flying the jet isn't going to cause any problem, isn't going to cause more problems. It's when all those poor people, burn their wood fires to cook food. And this is a huge problem, of course. What we really need is to, again, reduce, and I think this is really my ultimate takeaway for this whole conversation is there's so many people who believe what Jimmy's saying, who want to believe it. They want to believe, oh, the elites are just trying to make me suffer. This isn't even real. Well, it's absolutely real. And yes, they do want you to suffer. But the real answer is we all have to tighten our belts. None of us should be living better than anyone else. Okay, I got attacked for this. I said, and I always say this, everyone should have enough. Nobody should have too much. And so our friend, our scientist friend, Jeff says, why don't you just say it from each according to their ability, each according to their need. So it's like he's trying to say you're a communist. I don't think we should all have exactly the same. I don't even know what that could possibly look like because circumstances are always going to change and be different. And as I've said before, if you work harder and you're smarter and you're more efficient, yeah, fine. You get to live a little better than other people. But your kids and you don't get to live that much better. And even if you're lazy and feckless and not even that smart, and maybe you have some sort of a emotional issue, so you don't get as much as other people, fine. But you still get enough. You still have enough to live a comfortable life. And that's what we have to decide as a society. As long as we have massive income and wealth inequalities, the poor are always going to be easily swayed by being told that the rich are taking, are mocking them, taking advantage of them, want them to suffer, and then they'll cut their own throats. The only way we can redress that situation is, again, to take away wealth, power, and influence from the top and rebalance the scales so that everyone has enough and no one has too much. If we did that, we would start addressing the climate catastrophe. And in fact, the times when we have passed strong environmental laws in the 60s, in the 70s, were times when wealth and income inequality were much, much, much less. when people were making, the average corporation employee was making 25 times less, or 1/25th of what the CEO was making. Now they're making 1/500th. CEOs. All right, so the tweet that Dore mocks, a top climate scientist is warning that climate change will wipe out all humanity unless we stop using fossil fuels over the next 5 years. And he says, oh, she took it down, and look, we're all still here. So it can't be true. Well, she doesn't say there's the end of the world will be here in 5 days. She's not a millennialist, right, who climbed to the top of a mountain expecting to be raptured. She's not saying that. She's saying that we will be wiped out. And that's what a top climate, she's not even saying she says it. Greta Thunberg is saying that's what a top climate scientist is saying. And guess what a top climate scientist was saying? Guess what a top climate scientist was in fact saying at that time? Let's see. Now, of course, I messed that up. Top climate scientist was saying that the climate crisis will wipe out all of humanity unless we stop using fossil fuels over the next 5 years. So there it is. She got it exactly right from Grit Post. Scott Alden, February 19, 2018. Greta Thunberg's tweet was 100% accurate. So I don't know what Dore's complaint is. He doesn't have one. He's just scrambling. He's just desperate to find something to bash her for. But the fact is, her tweet was 100% correct. A top climate scientist did warn that climate change will wipe out all humanity unless we stop using fossil fuels over the next 5 years, as you can see from that Grit Post. And let's get into that article a little bit because it's pretty darn important. So who's the top climate scientist? James Anderson. He's at the University of Chicago. What kind of a professor is he? Atmospheric chemistry at Harvard University. I don't know who's more qualified. Is that the media? Is that the corporate elite? No, it's a scientist. It's a professor. This is as credible a source as you'll ever find. And what is he saying? He's saying climate change is drastically, humans burning fossil fuels is pushing Earth back 33 million years. Now, I was happy to see that because one of the arguments I've had in the past, or one point Jeff made to try to debunk me or to say I'm wrong, one of his points was, Hal, you're saying we've only had, you're saying, oh, it's hotter than it's ever been, but we only have data going back 150 years. So how could you possibly say it's hotter than it's ever been? And my response is, I don't say it's hotter than it's ever been. What I say is that it's hotter than it's been in 150 years, and that is caused almost certainly by human activities. And not only that, it's accelerating because of human activities. In other words, the temperature rise is accelerating, and it's accelerating at a very, very dangerous clip. That is what I say. And I am happy to point, and I've also said that what we're doing by putting back all that CO2 in the atmosphere is bringing us back to a time when the environment was much more similar to that of prehistoric times when it was much hotter. And that's exactly what Dr. James Anderson is saying, or Professor Anderson. I shouldn't call him a doctor. I think he's a doctor. Professor Anderson is saying that we're now looking at a climate that is 33 million years old. We haven't seen it on Earth for that long. So, of course, this is what we are doing. And it's, does climate shift over time? Absolutely. But it takes millions and millions of years, unless you have an intelligent species, a civilized species that's putting all that carbon that was slowly over eons sucked out of the air, out of the atmosphere by plants, unless you have a intelligent species, a civilized species, burning it all in very short order, which is exactly what we're doing. It's also one other point I just want to make that's really interesting about this is that our friend Anderson is probably right. His assessment of humanity's timeline is accurate, probably, because he's been so right in the past. And I think that's a very important factor. If you have a track record of being right, you're probably more likely to be right going forward. People like Joe Biden have a track record of being consistently wrong. They haven't taken the climate catastrophe seriously, and they're wrong again. This is what is disappointing about, one of the things that's very disappointing about Jimmy Dore is he has a pretty good track record. He's got a lot right. Now he's flat out wrong. And finally, I guess he would argue, well, how can you possibly say they're probably right when we're still here? We're not all dead. And she said, she quoted with approval, we're all going to be dead in 5 years. Well, again, that's not what the tweet said. The tweet said that we'll be doomed. We're facing end times if we don't grapple with climate crisis right now. And guess what? It looks exactly like that's correct. Here, this is from Amnesty International. It's about a little less than 2 years old, October 2021. This is the slideshow. I put the link to it so you can see it in the YouTube description of this video. And what we are seeing, a country, one of the most densely populated on earth, maybe the most densely populated, is Pakistan. And parts of it are now unlivable for humans. The climate crisis is not a distant threat, but it's a lived reality. And that's 2 years ago. And remember, things are hotter now. They're significantly hotter now. Jacobabad offers a glimpse of what life could soon look like in other parts of the world. So it looks like actually Dore's mocking tone is wholly inapposite, wholly improper, wholly inappropriate. We are, in fact, in end times because of what we're doing to our planet. There is no time left. And we are, in fact, dying right now. It's not like it's some future which might or might not happen. From that same period as the slideshow. This is from a university in Australia. World's largest study of global climate related. 5 million people dying every year because of the climate catastrophe. I understand there's disputes. Some people say it's less. I get that. But it's a credible estimate based on the study. Could be wrong. Credible estimate based on that study. 5 million. And let's just finish this off. So 5 million extra deaths a year can be attributed to abnormal hot and cold temperatures. Remember what Dore mocked in Turnberg's tweet. Not that we'll all fall off a cliff, that we're all going to be raptured in 5 years, but that we'll be, if we don't take immediate action to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions, we'll be doomed. And if you read that, what does it say? The study found deaths increased from 2000 to 2019, and that global warming due to climate change will make the figure even worse. So again, I'm just like sort of agog and astonished that, well, I think what Shade is right. I think he's playing to his audience. I think Dore's playing, and he doesn't really give a shit. He doesn't really, sadly, tragically, or to the extent he does care, and I used to think he cared, I think he cares more about audience size, subscriptions, likes. And that is human, tragic. I care about subscriptions and likes too, but I'm not going to change my message to please anybody. Click like, click subscribe. I'll be back Monday. Have a great weekend if you can.